Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, I like to discuss the curious case of the Tory deselections. In particular, the news that Home Secretary Suella Braverman may struggle to be reselected as the Tory candidate for her constituency and may have to go shopping around for a new one, which may prove a little bit awkward for the small but vocal group trying to reinstall Boris Johnson back as Tory leader. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So there's been a bit of a spate of deselection of Conservative MPs recently. Now, this is not because, as the Boris Johnson cult would have you believe, Conservative Party members taking revenge on those seen to have triggered his downfall. Deselection is when an MP, usually with a sitting MP, unless they stand down, some people are standing down for the next election, like Sajid Javid. But if they don't, if they say, no, I quite like being an MP, I'd quite like to carry on riding the gravy train, please. And generally their candidacy is rubber stamped, but why wouldn't it be? But in a small number of cases, the local parties say, well, we're not really happy with what you're doing. They may be at odds with them in terms of the policies they're pushing. It may just be that they don't feel that they're dedicated enough time to local constituency concerns, whatever it is, and then they trigger a deselection process. But the arguments at the moment with these various deselections going on, Johnson's cronies are trying to say, this person tried to bring Johnson down. This person tried to bring Johnson down. All these deselections are party members standing up and saying, no, we're not having this. And they're taking revenge on the people who put Boris down. But their arguments have been a little bit weak so far, because if party members really were taking revenge against those who felled Johnson, they would be deselecting people like Rishi Sunak, Nadeem Zahawi, Steve Baker, Ian Duncan Smith, Jonathan Gullis. All of these people were either very vocal about saying Johnson should quit, or were amongst the first wave of resignations which collapsed his government. None of these people, however, are facing deselection. The reason for the deselections is really because the Tories have been gerrymandering. They've changed the constituency boundaries to the point where quite a few constituencies do not exist in their current forms, or they won't for the election. So it's to try and give themselves an advantage and to get a few extra seats at the election. Now, in a tight contest, might have made a difference, but the current outlook is now that it's really not going to make much difference at all. But because some constituencies are being changed, they've been effectively merged with others, it means that the reselection of existing Conservative MPs isn't a simple case of, are we happy with you or not? Because now there are certain areas where there's two sitting MPs for the same constituency. We can only have one candidate. So you have to pick one, which means one loses out. So local party members have been deciding which candidate they prefer. And obviously that has meant the other one not being selected, or deselected as it's been described. And that's really all there is to it. And the same thing is reported to be happening with Suella Braverman. Now, she's not the MP for an area that cares about small boats or cares very much about demonising asylum seekers in general. It is a traditional Middle England Conservative area. It is, I gather, quite right-wing as well. But they're more interested in village fates than channel crossings. An article in the Times reported that the locals are more likely to back Flick Drummond, a backbench MP who seems to have more time for her local constituents, than the Home Secretary, who seems only to care about spending vast sums of public money to send a small number of vulnerable people to a human rights black spot on another continent. So Braverman stands a pretty good chance of being technically deselected. It's not really deselected in the normal terms. So then Johnson's supporters, now, are they going to try and spin that in their favour? If they're trying to claim that all these deselections are taking revenge against those who felled Johnson. Braverman stood by Johnson. Now, right at the end, the day before he resigned, she did then suggest that he should resign. But this is after his government already collapsed. But she didn't resign herself. So she can't be said to have brought Johnson's government down. Johnson resigned because he didn't have enough ministers in government positions. All Braverman did on the eve of his resignation announcement was point it out to him. So it would be a bit of a stretch to blame her for his downfall. Mind you, it's been a bit of a stretch with the deselection so far, crowing over various non-entities who only resigned right at the end and who no bugger's ever heard of. But Braverman will still challenge Johnson's cultists because if she's deselected, do they agree that she stood by Johnson or not? If they say she remained in post and so therefore stood by him, that damages their narrative that the party members ousting her are doing, or ousting any Tory MPs are doing so over Johnson. And if one deselection had nothing to do with revenge for Johnson, why would anyone suppose any of the others did? So what if they point out that actually, no, she called for him to go and, and the deselection was actually revenge against that decision? Well, then they have a couple of problems. The first is that the candidate currently challenging Braverman, Flick Drummond, who would win if Suella Braverman is deselected, it means the party members have gone for Flick Drummond, publicly called for Boris Johnson to resign, not on the eve of his actual resignation, not when his government was collapsing, not even the few days before. Last January, half a year before Braverman, she was amongst the first Tory MPs to call for Boris Johnson publicly to resign. Tricky. The second problem is that Braverman will be a candidate for the party at the next election. It's unthinkable that a senior member of the government will not be able to find a seat somewhere. And actually, there's another couple of seats in her local area around Hampshire that she's also applying for. She'll get one of them. And if she doesn't get one of those, she'll get one somewhere. And when she gets that candidacy, it will be a result of local party members voting for her to be their candidate. So what would Johnson's cronies say to that? I mean, they can try and claim that it's the establishment forcing her onto whichever unfortunate constituency accepts her, but local party members will still have voted for her. What do they do then? And if Sunak does announce his protocol deal this week, which won't just represent fixing a problem that Boris Johnson created, but also getting his party behind a contentious policy, then Johnson's chances diminish further. Assuming Boris Johnson really wants to become Prime Minister again, I do actually have my doubts these days. Maybe all he wants is to cart from the sidelines and when the party loses the election, claim he would have won it and just use this claim not as the basis for coming back, but as the basis for his speech circuit material forever after. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.